Hi, friends. It's me, Morgan Ruff, and this is another episode of Uplift Conversations. Well, these all came out of the fact that I've really noticed there's just a tad bit of stress in our world right now. So much uncertainty and overwhelm, and yeah, I've been feeling it. And I think for many of us who've been serving in the role of societal change makers, we might have already been feeling run down and burned out, overwhelmed, maybe even unsure of how we were moving forward. And then we've added a global pandemic on top of that, and we're being asked to juggle even more. And oh boy, it's a lot. If you're feeling stressed or anxious or worried or depressed, or maybe you're just feeling all the feelings all at the same time, that's sort of like me, it's okay. You're not alone. These conversations are really my way of supporting this very, very uncomfortable growth period that so many of us are being forced into. So I just thought, well, why don't we explore all those simple life hacks, deep woo woo, self care, and what it means to be really growing in this period of change and uncertainty, and see what comes of them. I just wanted to give a shout out and say we don't have to do this work alone. There is so much we can learn together. And if you want more, consider jumping over to my Facebook group, Uplift for Passionate Changemakers, where even more great stuff is being stirred up and brought forward. So today I'm super excited to talk with my dear friend, Kristin Swanson. She is a productivity coach and provides so many great resources and ideas of how we can start to think about managing our time maybe a little bit differently. She brings in mindfulness, brings in emotional intelligence, she brings in practical tips for managing our day to day. So without further ado, I'm super excited for you to listen to Kristin. All right, all have fun. Hey, we're recording. Hi, Kristin.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this chat.
I am too. And so today we wanted to just talk a little bit more about graceful productivity in this kind of crazy, crazy time that we are experiencing right now in our world. And you are a productivity coach. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what you do and like how you've come up with this term and all of that?
Yes. So I am a coach and a consultant, and I help people and businesses with their productivity. And my whole thing is, graceful productivity. So I came up with that just because I'm kind of a come from a background of like strategic planning, project management. That's kind of my corporate background, is that structure and project management and productivity, and like kind of a productivity junkie, if you will, right? With all these like time management concepts and everything. And that's kind of who I am and my history. And then as life would have it, I am a breast cancer survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And with cancer, you can't sort of project manage your way out of that one, is what I always say. It's like I had to learn a new way. And so now I'm a big believer in merging the two, like merging spirituality, mindfulness with productivity concepts to get the life and business that you want. So that's kind of what I teach, is how you have the plan, have the structure, use as much of those tools as work for you. And I'm a big believer in like knowing your work style and doing all of that. But then also knowing like when you need to surrender and when you need to let go and allow and pray or meditate or whatever that looks like in the midst of like having your structure, so that they complement each other, because it's happening in your life anyway. So you might as well kind of cultivate that a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. So this is going to be a funny question, but what is productivity to you?
Oh, it's
Like, what does that mean to you?
well, it's very unique definition to each person, I believe.
Uh-huh.
So I often ask, what would productivity look like to you? And right now, I think it's a very timely question, because right now I've talked to some clients where a productive day looks like getting through the day, like
Yeah.
without having a panic attack or without, feeling like you're on the verge of breakdown or whatever it is. So I think it's up to your own definition, like how you set those sort of expectations and desired outcomes, and then how much you want to see yourself get done in a day, for instance.
Yeah.
And then you measure yourself on that because it really is up to your own definition.
Your own standard and your own definition. I think it's such an interesting time to be like in the midst of trying to like many of us are like trying to maintain and hold work and some normalcy around our output and the products that we're developing. But obviously, like I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, you have kids as well, like, and folks who don't have kids or might not be having that same experience might be having different expectations of you and what you're able to produce than, if you were in a different situation. I think everybody here is experiencing this kind of social distancing and isolation with its own unique challenges. So like being home alone, you might feel lonely. Being home with kids, you might feel overwhelmed. Being home with a spouse, it might be like really testing your relationship or your marriage. So I think we all are coming at it with very different, like we're having these different experiences and the challenges are different. But it's interesting when you think about it in terms of like how you're setting your boundaries around work and personal expectations of what you can or maybe cannot produce in a world that's still trying to operate as if we're like normal. We're like kind of trying to just keep things moving and just move everything onto a virtual platform. And I'm kind of like, I can't keep up.
Yeah, and not to mention just the fear and anxiety that so many people are experiencing around money and revenue and whether your business is going to go on, all of it, like that is just like layered on top of it. And so we can't really expect ourselves to function in the same capacity that we were before, just layering on the anxiety.
Yeah. So what do you have any tricks or tips that you would kind of pull on if you're like in a position where the work is proceeding outside and you are in a different place of what you can actually produce, and like how you communicate that to teams or colleagues or others about like, in a way, it's like setting your boundaries and being really intentional with what it is that you can produce or being clear where you can show up.
Yeah. So I think it starts with knowing what you can and cannot do. So I'm really big right now on like, what can I control? So I'm like journaling on that a lot, like what is in my control. So I think sitting down even with your job description or your list of projects or whatever it is that you're responsible for right now and what you can control. And then also just like what your capacity looks like. So once you have, and then getting clear on what you think you can do given your new circumstances, whether it be like now you're a homeschooling mom in addition, or now you're doing these meetings virtually and you're managing a team virtually or whatever it is. So just getting clear with yourself first on what you can handle and commit to, and maybe even looking at that against what your kind of pre-COVID responsibilities. And then I always am a big believer in like renegotiating, like having a very candid conversation and bringing your humanness into it and just talking about where you're at, and like whether that even means talking about the anxiety that you're experiencing or your whatever your situation is, and then asking either for an extension on a deadline or can we postpone this meeting or whatever you need to ask for. So I think the other question is like, what do you need? And to ask yourself what kind of support you need, and to lean on other people. Like I've been talking to a lot of people about, can somebody else go to the meeting for you? Do you have to go to all of those meetings? Could the meetings be shortened? I mean, looking again, what is the agenda of those meetings? Does that make sense anymore? Should the agenda change? Did somebody else run the meeting? I mean, we have to look at everything differently one more time and just say what would work now.
Yeah, and I like it that you're really getting clear on those priorities, and you're like, what is my core function, and then kind of adding on from there. And you know, I think, yeah, I had another thought and I can't remember what it was, but
Add on to that, like, just like first your basic needs. I mean, even before you like look at your job responsibilities, it's like,
yeah.
are you getting enough sleep, nutrition, fresh air? I mean, we have to like go back to the basics. Hydrate. These things are so important right now.
Yeah, so it's that self-care and making sure that is like truly a priority. I
Yeah.
know, and I think that the thing that comes up is like getting comfortable with saying no.
Yeah.
And that in a way that's self-care, right? That's like I'm saying no to this because I just can't pretend that it's something that I'm going to be able to function and achieve. But I think for a lot of people in this world, a lot of women in particular, like saying no to work obligations.
Yeah.
When you've been juggling, like for me, I've been like, okay, I've been juggling family, I've been juggling work, and I've been making it work out, and I have a flow, and then there's this massive interruption. It's just boom. And all of a sudden, I just had to like hands up, surrender, like just start saying no. And it was really uncomfortable for me because I felt like, oh, I'm disappointing people, I'm letting people down.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
in
it's actually a really good time to practice it though. Because
yeah,
I think a lot of people sort of want to have those boundaries and don't in kind of the normal life. So let's practice it now while I think there is a little bit more grace. People are giving a little bit more grace given current situations. So it's a great
yeah,
time to practice it.
yeah, a lot more compassion happening in our world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think yeah, I think that ability to also be real clear with what your experience is and be a bit vulnerable
Yeah.
is another key point that I heard you say. And like, I think in a professional setting, we often are just kind of holding pieces of ourselves back. And right now, like, you show up to meetings, everybody's singing your home. they're seeing like the kids walking in and out. And so I think that there's a particular type of vulnerability that many of us are experiencing maybe for the first time that can also be a little, maybe even a little anxiety triggering, like, oh gosh, I have to actually admit this is hard, or I have to actually be honest about my feelings.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's hard, and there's like a little bit of what Brene Brown calls like a vulnerability hangover afterwards. Maybe you might feel those judgments or whatever, but I think it's the same thing as practicing saying no, practicing vulnerability right now, because I think it also, there's sort of a gift in it, in that it helps people connect more to you if you are vulnerable. So I think it really does end up being a good thing, but you kind of have to get through those feelings afterwards, and know that we're all in it together though.
Yeah.
And nobody really cares if your house is messy in the background and your kids are, I mean, it makes you feel like, oh, she's normal too, right? Like she has that same messy kitchen sink or whatever it is that then
Yeah.
they might connect with you on. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's been a pretty interesting experience. So what are some other, so we talked a lot about like kind of the boundaries and the self-care. What are other productivity tips that you have? Setting priorities is another one. Do you have any other ideas that you think have been working for you or that are super helpful?
Yeah, I think I often talk about a brain dump as something like when you have that like overwhelmed feeling, like I don't even know where to start, which is kind of a really common theme I'm hearing right now. It's like there's just so much to do, I don't even know where to start. Plus, like I said, you layer on the anxiety, and then that's even harder to be clear and focus on what you want. So starting with a brain dump, just like a pen and a piece of paper, and just write out every single thing that's on your mind, everything you need to do, everything that you've ever thought, like just get it out. And some people do it some people can type it out like on a little task list, and hit enter and just keep going and keep going. The idea being to just dump it all out of your head. And because then, for one thing, it just makes it just clears it, is one thing. But then once it's on paper, you can start to prioritize. And not that you need to sit down and prioritize every single thing on that list, but the things that are important are going to like pop out at you, and you'll know that those are the things I need to focus on first. And whatever, star those or put those ones on your calendar. and start there and just start small. And so the brain dump is one. Another one is like knowing whatever it is for you to just like change your energy. Like if you notice yourself in either that overwhelmed or kind of negative energy space, for me, it's like taking a walk and getting fresh air. And I think it's different for everyone. It might be meditation, it might be journaling, it might be going for a run or whatever it is. And just kind of having those things that you're putting into your day on purpose too. I think sometimes, especially now, that's not something that like, we don't have the exercise class that you're always going to at 12 o'clock on Tuesdays. So you have to add in some structure that, and it might be kind of hard right now because it doesn't sound like something that you want to do maybe, but it really does help your productivity. And I would say notice your energy afterwards and notice your focus afterwards. And I mean, every time I do go on a walk, for instance, like if I do feel overwhelmed, I mean, if I'm not doing a brain dump, I will go on a walk. And I promise that every single time I come back, the top priority thing is like, it floated to the top of my mind. I mean, it works every time. So just trust that that's going to happen. Instead of, I think our instinct is to like power through, like we're just going to work ourselves because I can't leave my computer and I can't even get up and eat and I can't, but yeah. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it does definitely work. So lots of breaks right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that when I'm working from home, I have a harder time having my breaks, maybe because like at the office, there's lots of engagement and like you kind of just have a different rhythm. But when I'm at home, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to eat all day long. And it's just such a different working environment.
Yeah. I mean, so that's another thing is sort of loosely using a calendar, even if you don't have like calendar of meetings in your Outlook or, on your paper calendar, is to just like kind of have a schedule for just roughly like I'm going to eat breakfast around 8-ish. And then, when you're going to have your meals and or like exercise and some of your important tasks. And then just use it as a guide and don't beat yourself up over it if you don't do X, Y, and Z at 12 o'clock, but use it as something that you're working towards and then kind of look at it at the end of the day and reevaluate like what was working, what wasn't working. Maybe I need to schedule in more breaks tomorrow. The other thing about like taking the breaks that I like to do and like to tell people to do is use a timer. Because if you tell yourself, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work on this blog post or whatever it is, like whatever your task is, and it's only going to take me a half an hour, or I'm only going to work on it for 45 minutes, and you tell yourself that and you set a timer, there is just something different about your energy and how productive you are in that moment when you know the timer's going. You can like ignore the dings, stop opening all the other web browsers because you've kind of set this time for yourself and you're going to do it, because work expands to fit like the time that you have, and you could spend all afternoon on that. So it's kind of like a trick that you could play on yourself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I totally forgot about the time. I used to use that a lot, and I was doing for a while like a 50-10.
Okay.
50-10, 20-30 or something like.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different like theory, and I just did a post about this recently because it's actually very timely with some of us homeschooling moms, because it's like 30 minutes of math, 30 minutes of reading, like that's kind of their schedule. So I'm like using that I'm setting a timer for them anyway. So it's like, okay, that'll be my 30 minutes too for whichever task it is. So
that's great.
It works to our advantage.
One of the things that you kind of said quickly, and I think is worth spending a little time about, is the reflection at the end of the day. Because you and I have talked a little bit about this, and it's a step that I often forget about when I'm thinking about kind of time management. And so can you just talk a little bit about like some of the questions that you ask yourself at the end of the day, or what your process is for reflection, and why that's an important part of this kind of, as we're evolving and recreating what productivity means.
Yeah. So I think it's so important right now in particular, because it really does, a theme I'm hearing is like what I used to do doesn't work anymore. Like whether it's like I used to meditate on my own and now I need to use guided meditation, or I've heard like the opposite of that. I used to, so I used to use the guided meditation, now I need to do it on my own, like whatever. And sometimes, like or yoga used to work and now it doesn't. So there's like, we have to kind of be tweaking. I keep noticing that we have to like notice what's working and what's not working. And so it's just a good time to do it at the end of your day when it's like fresh in your mind. How did it go? And then some of the questions that I would ask myself are, I just think it's good to end your day on what you're proud of. I think we're so hard on ourselves, especially right now. I hear a lot of like inner critic stuff that's like even louder right now. I think for some reason, I don't really know what that's about, but we're being even harder on ourselves. Maybe our expectations are higher or something. So what am I proud of and what am I grateful for? If you haven't already like done a gratitude, some people do that in the morning or just it's another good thing to add in. And so I do something that I learned from Kate Northrup, who wrote the book Do Less, which is a to-do list for the universe. Because basically what you're doing is you're surrendering those things that like you don't have the answers to, but it helps you like get that out before you hit your head hits the pillow. And because really that's what happens when you can't sleep and everything, like all our minds just going and going on how am I going to solve this problem. And if you just kind of surrender it right before bed, I find that that's really helpful.
Wow, yes.
I don't know. I mean, she might suggest that you do it like in your weekly planning, or I can't remember, but I got the idea from her. I love it. And then there's just something about like getting it out right before bed.
Yeah, because I think that is like, I do that a lot where I'm sitting in bed and my mind's just going, and I have a hard time falling asleep. And that's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that type of thing. Awesome. I like that.
And I really like the journal. It's called the 5-minute journal.
Ooh,
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that one.
And it asks some of those similar questions like gratitude. It's not what are you proud of, but it's something like that. What are your biggest achievements today, or something amazing that happened today? I think it is. Anyway, it's just a guided journal that really makes it quick and easy to do both in the morning and at night.
Yeah, I found, I don't know, somebody posted somewhere like a list of 5 questions that you should ask yourself every day. Yeah, and I liked it because it's like, what are you letting go of for expectations of normalcy right now? Like, how are you finding gratitude? How are you getting outside? How are you moving your body? And then what's creative? What's like inspiring you? What are you putting into the fire so that you can keep the flame stoked? And I thought those were fun questions just to kind of have top of mind as you, like for me, I get overwhelmed and my daughter's having a temper tantrum and I'm trying to, the other day I was on a Zoom call and it's kind of, more serious business that we were dealing with. And I was downstairs, like literally picking my daughter up and like throwing her on a mattress. Like we have this kind of sensory area for her because she was just starting to deregulate. And then she went over and decided to play the drum set. And I was like, ah! And so I feel like, there's this like sense of like, okay, I have to breathe during those points. And like, what am I grateful for? And those questions just sort of ground me. I mean, the gratitude and letting go of normal are kind of grounding questions to me. And the other are more about like, how am I taking care? How am I moving myself and getting myself out into, taking care of myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's been a wild adjustment period and a wild ride for everybody. Yeah. Do you have any other like tips for working with children on productivity? Like, is that anything that you talk about or explore?
Well, not like in my business, but our kids' school is a Leader in Me school. So it's like the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, but for kids.
Oh, cool.
So I do have experience in it for that, from doing that. And so, I mean, there's that is kind of like teaching them to be proactive and like set goals and that kind of thing. And so, and then having them do things like gratitude. I mean, I think they're having a really hard time too right now, whether they know it or not. Their worlds have just been turned upside down in terms of like, football's canceled, everything, basketball, Girl Scouts is now Zoom. I mean, everything is just, it's so different, right? And so we have been doing like a gratitude, like a post-it a day of what you're grateful for. And that helps just kind of like brings them back to positive, because I think there's a lot of things that are like birthday parties are now on Zoom, and this is hard for them.
Yeah.
So productive. I mean, I think a lot of breaks. I mean, it's kind of what we were talking about with the timer, and a lot of breaks and like getting their wiggles out. I mean, I've gotten so many like links, and hopefully your people have too. And if not, I can send you guys links from, there's all these different websites where you can do either like a little dance or, like different things. The teachers use them too, right? Like to have brain breaks, I think they call them. And just get their wiggles out and then get back to work. So there's something about like small chunks for them for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really good. And again, just like letting go of expectations. That's been one of the things that I have been letting go of. It's just like going with the flow of their energy more than what I want them to do. So like, sometimes I have a schedule and I'm like, I want you to be sitting down and like doing your math at this time and this and that. And that just was creating battles for me. And so instead I'm like, let's like, okay, you guys are doing a good job playing together quietly. So keep doing that. And then what I found is my daughter will circle back to like, hey mom, can we do that math now? And I'm like,
yes.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. So it's almost like follow their energy, follow and meet them where they are, because that is definitely what I am learning is like, don't force it, because that just becomes more of a battle. And so whether it's like having a list, and as long as like you get through the list today, it could be, the schooling can go into the evening or tomorrow, or let some of it go. I'm definitely like crossing some of it off the list. I mean, these times are, I think we can safely say that like it's going to be okay. They're going to be okay. They're resilient. So
yeah, totally.
Go sometimes.
I think just like before I wanted to just talk a little bit more about the mindfulness aspects of the graceful productivity, and like what I think a lot of folks are kind of, if they didn't already have a mindfulness practice, they're like, oh my goodness, I need a mindfulness practice right now. And, meditation is a component of that. But I think there's also just mindfulness and awareness around like how you're feeling throughout your day, and how you can move and adjust. You were talking about shifting your energy. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about like, what is mindfulness in the graceful productivity world, and like how can people cultivate that in their kind of day to day?
Yeah, so I really like to work with people on like what resonates with them and their style. So maybe it is meditation for some people, maybe it is walking, maybe it's journaling. It's different for everyone, but to just know that it's important to have that like space in your day. It helps with so many different things. I mean, it helps with the productivity because you're able to focus more when you've had that, like those moments of peace. I mean, it can also be like mindful eating, or you could practice mindfulness when you're in the shower or toweling off or washing your hands right now. It's a really good one. So different like moments throughout your day, because it helps you to focus, and it also helps with the inner critic. Like to be present and aware, like the more you practice mindfulness, the more you have that like awareness of the things that are going on in your head, and you kind of be that like gentle observer of your thoughts, instead of just like letting it happen and you don't even notice it because you haven't like gotten quiet enough to notice it, which I think it's hard right now. I don't think it's easy right now. I think so I would say like even shorten your meditations if you need to, and like add on minutes, or maybe less meditations, but more frequently throughout the day, or just try different things. Walking meditations are also helpful for some people. And just finding those pockets within your day when you can do that. And if you have to like set reminders on your phone or plan it into your calendar, and then the biggest thing is just like noticing your energy. So paying attention to how your body feels, and if you're feeling like either overwhelmed or in that just like a negative space, or you find yourself ultra self-criticism, just to watch that and then act, like do something to shift it. And that takes practice. So I often ask people to like get support with that. Like maybe if that's a friend or an accountability partner or somebody that you can check in with on that, or your spouse, and just say that I'm working on this, and because then they might ask you how it's going, and it just kind of keeps it going, holds you accountable.
Yeah, I have been finding myself needing to remind myself, like, I am not my emotions. I am not my thoughts. Just because they're running through my head, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily true. And it's, it's only been I've been doing a lot of mindfulness for a really long time, and I'm grateful for all the practice that I've had, because even with it now, I mean, it's obviously a very stressful and hard time. And, so like I'm very grateful to have that, but like I've been definitely feeling like I have to shift things for myself. Things that I was doing before this is just like, I need to walk and exercise before I meditate. It used to be like a very routine, like I meditate and blah 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 blah, but now like there's just so much anxiety. It has to get out of my body first before I can sit and be quiet and still.
And I wanted to add that for anyone that's new to mindfulness, to just also know that we're releasing, especially if you're sensitive, like some of us that are highly sensitive we're releasing like not just our energy, but like the negative energy that we are just like feeling around us right now, whether that be like social media or the news, and just being aware of that. Because I don't know that everybody knows that that's even happening, and we just feel yucky, and it's like, what happened? What is this? So
Is this even mine? I don't know. Yeah.
So I definitely recommend like a grounding meditation for that, and just like letting go of all of that, all of those, whether it's judgments or whatever, like letting go of it. And whether that be like, there's all kinds of them on Insight Timer is one app that I like, but all kinds of different grounding meditations. But usually there's something about like a grounding cord into the earth, whether that be like visualizing an oak tree or, a chain. I've heard all kinds of different grounding cords. Then you're just kind of like letting it go down into the earth. And that really, I think right now is so important.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Grounding meditation. Yeah. You can do a lot of things for that. You can walk barefoot outside, and you can, anything that will just sort of get you from spinning out of your head and kind of get you more into your body and into your kind of sensory. Yeah. And
barefoot on the grass and stuff, like that's a great thing to do with kids, like for a brain break, right?
Yeah.
They would love that.
Yeah. It's so funny, I'm very much an outdoor person, as you know, and like work in the environmental field, and like I cannot get my kids outside right now. I'm like, what is going on?
What is that about? I know.
It's just kind of, it's March. It's like March in the Northwest. It's like cold. It's that damp, cold, windy. It's just not the most inviting.
Yeah. I know, and I'm trying to almost like teach them like when we get back. Now, doesn't it feel great? Because then I'll get them out there, and then they're fine. Like once they got their scooters, and they're fine, and then they had fun. So it's like the same thing. Like, don't you feel so much better afterwards? I don't know.
Yeah, it's the activation energy that can be a little hard to get.
Right. I know. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, gosh, you gave us so many tips. Things like the brain dump for overwhelm, making sure you're taking breaks, tracking your energy and really shifting it, being aware, doing evaluation. You gave us questions, setting timers, creating a to-do list for the universe, grounding meditation is like so much. And plus there was a lot more. So like, thank you. Those are amazing tips and tricks. And I think that just tons of information here. How can people connect with you, follow you? Do you have any like programs that you're offering right now, particularly for those who are looking for a little more guidance in this kind of weird world that we're navigating?
Yeah, so I just started a free Facebook group that let's link that in the comments.
Yes.
I mean, I'll send it to you and then you can put it in the comments. My Instagram handle is Kristin_Swanson_. And my website is KristinSwansonConsulting.com. And on that, on KristinSwansonConsulting.com, there's a Make It Happen planner that helps you kind of break down a project that maybe you've had on the back burner that you really want to make time for. So it helps you get that going. And I have group coaching programs and one-on-one coaching programs. I'm starting a group right now really focused on getting some of those, like those projects that you maybe were putting off until someday, getting some of those jump started. Like a lot of people are, always wanted to start a podcast, or they always wanted to create an online coaching program. And so I'm helping some people get through some of that stuff right now while they have a little bit of time, but also knowing that these times that we're in. So that's why this whole graceful productivity thing is like so important right now. Like, yes, do those projects. And we didn't even talk about that article. We got to talk about that.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Like, don't expect too much of yourself right now. So yeah, I thought that article was really good about that. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh shoot, I can't remember what it was called, but I'll link it in the, in the comments underneath this. Yeah, and it was talking a lot about like just having more self-compassion in a way for how we're approaching this environment. Like people are kind of, charging ahead and proceeding as if there's been no change. We're just like, oh, we can just do all this body of work that we were doing. We're just going to switch it all to virtual. And we are almost missing a very important moment of pause and reflection. And I think there's a component of processing our feelings that is sort of like, we don't want to like truly look at and experiencing these feelings. I mean, this is like our society in general, like icky feelings, push them away. Icky feelings, I'm going to go shop. Icky feelings, I'm going to go like do more. I'm busy my schedule. So, and we're at a point right now where there are a lot of hard, big feelings, and we are also at home with maybe a little bit more time, and like the contrast is, I think people are feeling it, and there's a sense of like, I'm just gonna push.
Yeah. And there was and there was something about it, like there was something about like the word should that came through to me at sort of the end of the article, I think, where we put this on ourselves, like, oh well, now we should be doing this, or I should be doing so much of the homeschool, whatever it is, like these expectations that are too high right now when considering where we are in this like crisis mode, actually.
Yeah, I think, and I think that it's easy, like we don't want to be in that crisis. We don't want to feel that discomfort. And so we're just like, I'll just make it all happen. And it's that, for me, I come back to like the self-compassion and being like, wait, this is hard. Like, this is hard for me. This is hard for others. And like, how do I need to show up for myself so that I am like not overdoing.
Right. Because it can almost be like another form of numbing. I mean, that's kind of what I also got out of the article. So that's good to like focus on self-compassion and like honoring the feelings that you're feeling. Like it is grief. Like that is a big deal. And so letting yourself go through all of those stages. Yeah,
absolutely. So I guess we'll probably have to have another conversation at some point about grief and grief processing.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation. Just a very rich.
Yeah, I'll get you the websites that we could put in there. So my group coaching program is called Execute with Ease, and you can just get a hold of me on my website or on direct message me on social media.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your tricks with us.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you. It's so great to see your face.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad you're doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Well, hopefully folks enjoy it and listen. And I always encourage people to like comment below with questions and ideas and ahas and takeaways, and hopefully they will.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Bye. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.